In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. The first 4 verses of the very first chapter of the Bible. In the beginning of it all, God created the heavens and the earth and separated the light from the darkness. It may be the times we are living in, but man, made in God's image, seems continually to be trying to separate good from evil, right from wrong, just from unjust, people from other people, categorizing, sectioning off, stereotyping, and rationalizing. Unlike God, we are not one in our decision of what should be separated and what that separation should look like. Racially, sexually, based on appearance, based on choices, we separate and separate again. We recognize that we are not all one and the same, but yearn for company. So we confess to ourselves that to say everyone is too unique to be compared would make us feel far too lonely. So we are drawn to create groups and to separate them one from the others. Then we decide which are good and which are bad, dark and light, as if we were God creating the earth, when we are merely a body of humanity. I was reading through some of my grandmother's sermons last week and came across a sermon she preached on Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan. She began her sermon with a visual. Imagine, if you will, a line running down the middle of the church sanctuary, through the aisle. Imagine that you suspected those persons on the other side of trying to put something over on you, of being untrustworthy for some reason, of having subversive beliefs. Imagine persons on both sides of the aisle, gathering stones and piling them higher and higher in the middle. Imagine that a year has passed, 5 years, 10 years, and that during that time, you have no contact with the persons on the other side of the aisle, except to note that they occasionally pile more stones on the wall, making it higher and stronger. How will you feel about the persons over there? I went to the polling place this Tuesday to vote in the presidential primary, another area where we have definitive separation, which I noticed from the moment I walked in the door and approached the entry table. The first words spoken to me were a question. What is your party? And I remember feeling caught off guard, not at the question. It's a primary, after all, a time of voting where you decide who your party candidates will be, so it's necessary to choose a party if you want to vote in a primary election. No, what shocked me a little bit is that she asked the question out loud. I had assumed that it would be a question on a screen before I started voting, that I would click a box and nobody would know my answer but me. Right then and there, I had to say it out loud. I had to verbally separate myself from others. I didn't like the feeling. I didn't like it because I knew there were people in the room who, when they heard me say my party name, immediately felt separated from me, immediately assumed things about me, immediately assumed that they wouldn't like me or even wouldn't agree with me. That didn't feel right in a world where we are constantly trying to advocate that it is okay to be different. People are afraid to voice their differences, afraid to show their differences, and they are not afraid for no reason. Many times they are met with judgment in the form of hatred or violence or disapproval. And when they reach out to others who could lift them up, they may be met with indifference. Last week, I talked about the Holy Spirit within us all and the potential to feel personal happiness and fulfillment through the discovering and lifting up of that Spirit within, and how through a focus on our own potential, we can more clearly see the potential in others. With the separation and hurt in the world around us, how can the Holy Spirit help us to focus on the pain within ourselves in order to more clearly see the pain in others? You may have your own very real experiences with feeling pain caused by someone who may even not have been intending to cause you specifically pain, or who disagreed with you, or separated you into a different category than themselves, and their actions, while not directly harmful to you, hurt. However, when we feel pain, distrust, or anger, it is wise first to acknowledge our own sense of personal journeying, our own sense of feeling like we are on the paths to our calling, but are not quite there yet, and to find the places in our pain where it may not really be the situation that upset us, but the fact that the situation reminded us of parts of ourselves where we are still in need of the movement and healing of the Holy Spirit, our own guilt and insecurities. When a judgment that we or other people have made causes us to get angry or hurt, often there will always be reasoning and rationalization for our pain. We can logically justify it to ourselves. We can detail how what they did hurt us or others, but that fact alone should not lead us to anger or hatred. What we may need to do in those moments, rather than seeing other people who we believe are acting in the wrong and responding with our own harsh judgments, is first to take a moment to seek the Holy Spirit. This is not to abandon justice or to enable hatred in the world. It is only a first step to curing the injustice and enabling love. Once we have centered ourselves in the Holy Spirit, we are accepting God's loving guidance into our thoughts and actions as we approach the situation. It is a moment to acknowledge and to address our own personal pain by seeking the Holy Spirit within ourselves to lift us up and to help us remember that we are on our own life-giving paths set by God, even if we are still journeying through them. Taking that moment to feel the fulfillment through the Holy Spirit within ourselves can help us to see and acknowledge others first and foremost in the situation, so that neither side is acting in hatred toward the other, assuming that all people in that group deserve their hatred. In a situation where we strongly disagree with each other about something, as we're seeing in the violent pain of our country or the aching rift within our church denomination, a recognition of the Holy Spirit within ourselves would be a recognition of the Holy Spirit within others. And that is hard to do one-sided. It is difficult to say, I am praying for the Holy Spirit within me to lift you up and to acknowledge how you are feeling, admitting my own pain while acknowledging your feelings as well, and to be met with violence in return, or indifference in return, or hatred in return. The Holy Spirit, the living water, is always moving. It's working in people's hearts. And it is not for us to know the movement of the Spirit, but it is our calling to be reservoirs of the Spirit, wells of the Spirit, springs of the Spirit, bubbling over with the Spirit in our every thought and action, so that none can say we acted with indifference, or violence, or hatred, so that all can sense the Spirit within us reaching out and comforting, offering acceptance and openness and understanding, not just to those who we have separated out into our category of people, but to all people, so that all can have an opportunity to see and feel the movement of the Spirit through us that can break through the indifference, calm the violence, and replace the hatred with grace. May it be so. For our closing prayer and benediction this morning, the words of the Apostle Paul to the church in Corinth from 2 Corinthians 13:11. Finally, brethren, farewell. Be perfect, be of good comfort, be of one mind, live in peace, and the God of love and peace shall be with you. Amen.